I'm Theo.
And I'm Juliet.
And this is Apologies Accepted.
We offer an entertaining look at some of the big issues in history by examining public apologies of the famous and infamous.
We're looking at politicians, serial killers, actors, and you.
Send us a public apology you would like to make, and we'll read it on the air and give you a chance to redeem yourself, or just get some guilt off your shoulders.
We're here for you. Once a week, maybe more if you're really, really sorry. Hi, everybody.
Hey, everybody. This is Apologies Accepted, the
podcast.
And I'm not Theo.
And I am not Juliet. I'm not.
And you refuse to be. What's shaking, bacon?
Well, my week has just been all work, and pre-show I shared with you, like, all the work stuff.
Yes, gossip.
The hot gossip at my job. And then took the weekend to have like a nice quiet weekend, sort of decompress from like all of the noise at work. And
sweet.
Great. And so yesterday was beautiful. I didn't do anything. I went shopping, bought stuff,
Yay.
Nothing major.
What'd you buy? I want to know what you bought.
Something that got me in trouble. I bought, it's like a filing cabinet, but for beauty products. Ish beauty products. It's really, it's an office drawer. You'd stick it on your desktop and you put papers, or it's drawers. I'm over explaining a stupid thing. So I bought this little small white cabinet to sit on top of our vanity in the bathroom.
Yeah.
Because there's so much lotions and hair products and
I relate.
Medications and
for sure
ointments, just you name a thing, and like it's in a tube and it's sitting on our vanity, right? So it's just like, get the shit out of sight, stick it in a place. So
where did you find this?
Oh, well, the outlet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
The Pottery Barn
outlet. I saw
outlet.
one on TikTok that I wanted to buy that was made for beauty products, but I was wondering if you saw the same thing.
No. This was straight, purely a find in the wild, where it was like, oh, well, this is meant for office supplies, but I could adapt it because it'll hold tubes of lotions. They're great.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then I was politely reminded that those things were not mine, nor were they mine to put away. But
okay.
Well, that sounds harsher than it was. That was meant half as a joke, but
the bathroom is half yours, and you get to say what goes on in your bathroom.
Well, let's say that.
You should remind him of that.
Is mine. Period. You have the whole outside world, but I get in here.
You get the house.
Anyway, yeah. So that does sound worse than it was. It was meant more as a joke, but it was also definitely meant as I appreciate your helpfulness, but please don't reorganize my stuff.
So you really don't have bottles and tubes of beauty products for yourself? They're all for James?
Look at me. Do you think I have moisturizer?
Well, I mean, yeah. You don't really strike me as the sort of person to use a lot of beauty products, but
no, I don't, because I don't look like.
I mean, no, that's not what I'm saying. Oh my god! Oh my god! Not what I'm saying. But yeah, I'd assume that you would share the load equally of beauty products.
Well, short answer is no. I can't even be bothered. If it's not a black T-shirt, I can't be bothered to put it on. So, facial creams and
I feel ya.
all that. Yeah, I just, yeah. But so that's the story of the bathroom vanity organizer. And that story, I'm sure, will now haunt me forever. This will be the one episode that James does listen to.
Yeah, right. And
we need to talk about this organizer.
Like that's not how it went.
But yeah, so this morning I went out to get some coffee pre-show. Get some coffee and get those brain cells firing. And
smart.
Drive around your old neighborhoods and take a look at the places you used to live. Because that's what I do, right? Because I like to do that.
Yeah.
And so what a morning, I will say. And how some of my morning ties into this episode. So I went out and got coffee, and the barista was the son of a friend, and I had no idea that he was working at Starbucks. And when he stuck his head out the window to say hi to me, I thought that he was trying to get my phone so that he could scan the barcode to pay for the coffee. And my first thought was, this barista's really in a hurry. But surprise, surprise. So that was a pleasant surprise. And then I drove past our old house, and this cat was just sitting in the middle of the road right in front of my old house and did not move as my car came up the road.
Wow.
Right? Now, I drive through my old neighborhoods hoping that my neighbors will not see me. Because I don't want them to be like he moved away, but he can't stop coming round. Oh, look at him. So curious about what's happening in his old town. So the cat sat there probably for 3 minutes just staring me down.
Wow.
And I was like, I know someone's going to come out, get the morning paper if people still do that, or pull out of their driveway, or be walking or jogging or taking their dog out, whatever. Yeah. And they're going to be like, Theo, what are you doing?
And they're going to see you run over that cat.
Well,
yeah.
I would definitely have, that cat would have been toast if one of my neighbors had shown up. I'd be like, so cool. And then I was driving to our old other neighborhood, doesn't matter, another place I lived. And I drive right past the police station in downtown Austin, which is where there is a large homeless encampment because there's or unhoused encampment, because there is a shelter there. And if you can't get into the shelter, then the parking lot at the police station is a safe place to be. It's well lit and there are cops. So I more than get it. But what happens is some of the people will stand out in the middle of the road in order to ask for money or try and clean your windshield. And so this was an uncomfortable and not happy moment for me. We'll just tell the story. So I'm at the stoplight. It's like 7 o'clock in the morning. There's nobody on the road. There's one other car, right? This is like a 4-lane road, freeway entrance. I don't know what to call it. Feeder road. So this guy comes over and he starts washing my windshield. Typically, when people want to earn money from washing your windshield, they will come up and they'll wave at you and they'll ask, right? This guy just went straight to it. Yeah. And so, old LA reflexive move, I hit my windshield wipers and said, I don't need it. And then I thought, you know what? That's kind of an asshole, you know? And the guy stopped washing my windshield, but leaning over and started, saying something, I'm not sure what, because all this happened within the same 5 seconds. And so I rolled my window down and I said, no, thank you. And the look on his face was outrage. And I was just like, ugh. And then I said, go away. And he said, go away. And then he leaned on my car and stared at me through the windshield, right? And I was like, oh, God, he's going to sit here and make a giant point of this. So I put my car in park and I turned on my hazards. And then I automatically reached for my phone and I was like, well, time to call 911. And then thought about it and was like, if you do that, that is not going to end well for anybody. Right. And also, really, you have to call 911. You can just sit in your car and deal with it. You invited this on yourself, sucker. So have a good morning. The light turned green and he got off of the car and bowed and said, take 3 deep breaths and pray. And I put my car in drive and drove away. And it was like, Jesus, your first thing was to dial 911? That was sort of like where I went to, right?
I might have too, though. I mean, I would have felt intimidated and a little frightened.
I definitely realized I'd bitten off more than I could chew. But also recognized that the power dynamic was weighed massively in my favor. Really, am I going to let this be the thing? Come on, Theo, to stop it. But also can't believe that you did the classic move of I am going to call 911. And of course, being the person that I am, I got caught into, I don't know what to call it, like a liberal vortex of if I call 911 on a person of color, then I am just contributing to these problems, blah, 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 blah. So
Right.
happily the light turned green, and happily he did not want to make a massive point out of how I dismissed
That's
him
good.
as a human
Yeah.
being by saying, go away. I might say that to anybody who was bothering me in public, but, I for sure felt more free to say that to somebody who was homeless, trying to earn some money on the street. So didn't feel awesome. And then I was like, fuck it. And I drove to my old house, and that's where the bar was with all the shootings in the past. And it's ACL this weekend. So it was like a big, massive party on 11th Street last night.
This morning?
Well, this
last
morning
night.
was sort of the evidence of a massive party, right? 4 Cop closed down the side street next to the bar and had a patron, and I just know that it was a bar patron who was going to the bar, and don't know what was happening, but I was like, you know what? This doesn't feel like the morning for you to be out gallivanting around. Maybe you should just go home and close the door. And so that's what I
Be
did.
glad you don't live in any of those old neighborhoods anymore.
Well, don't know what's going on. Don't know if it's ACL. Don't know if it's me. But I think it's a really great day for me just to stay inside. Definitely. And what about you? What's shaking bacon? Take us somewhere happy.
Well, I went to Big Sur last weekend, which was nice. We went down on Friday afternoon, and it's about a 3.5-hour drive. It took about 4.5 hours because of traffic was so bad. Down through San Jose all the way past Santa Cruz, like about half an hour past Santa Cruz. It was really bad. So that took a little bit longer than expected, but that's fine. We got there, and the place we're staying in was like the Big Sur Lodge, which is nice. It was nice for Big Sur. It wasn't fantastic. There's a couple hotels in Big Sur that are absolutely gorgeous and beautiful, and at $4,000 a night, literally. Which no way in a million years, even if I had millions of dollars, would I spend $4,000 a night on a hotel room. I'm sure that it's beautiful and the views are stunning and all that, but no.
What is
we
worth
stayed at the Big Sur
$4,000 a
Lodge. No, I just couldn't do it. So we stayed at the Big Sur Lodge, and it was nice. It was a little bit rustic, but there was no wireless, basically no wireless or cell phone service. So that was a little bit interesting, trying to live without cell phone service for the first time in years and years. And it was actually fine. I did fine without it. I did bring a book, but I didn't even read the book. I don't know what I did, but we didn't have a TV. I don't think there was a TV in the room, come to think of it. There probably wasn't any cable either, so it was just very relaxed and very low key. And we went to lunch at the Sierra Mar at the Post Ranch Inn, which is one of those $4,000 a night hotels. And it was expensive lunch. It was a prefix, and it was pretty good, I would say. It was a good meal. I don't know that it was worth. The meal itself was not worth the $100 and some per person for lunch, or $200 maybe per person per lunch. But the view was gorgeous. We were seated right in the corner, overlooking the cliffs and the ocean, and it was foggy for the first half of the meal, but the fog cleared up towards the end, and we could see the cliffs, and it was just absolutely gorgeous. So it was a really a very nice, relaxing meal. And the night before, we'd actually eaten at a place called the Big Sur Restaurant and Bakery, which was the best meal we had and also the cheapest. But their bread was absolutely outstanding. So if you ever go to Big Sur, go to the Big Sur Restaurant and Bakery. We had some, I think it was trout. For dinner, which was absolutely delicious, and then the bread was just kick-ass bread. So I recommend that place. And then for lunch, the final day we were there, we went to Ventana. I forget the name of the place, but it was another place that was right on the edge of the cliffs, only this was outside. And it was the sun came out about 10 minutes into lunch, so everything cleared up, and it was just, again, gorgeous views. Good meal. It was kind of hamburger type of place. expensive hamburgers and things like that. Brent had fish tacos, and they were just fine. But again, you're paying really for the location and the fact that you're eating it at Ventana, which is another one of those $4,000 a night hotels. So overall, a successful weekend. We walked around a little bit. I wouldn't call it hiking, but we walked around some trails and saw some things. We kind of went shopping. Went to a cafe with an art gallery. Didn't buy anything, but I think that was a successful weekend. It was very relaxing and low key. And this coming weekend, actually, we're going to go up to Ashland, Oregon, for the Oregon Shakespeare Festival, which we used to do pretty much every year until COVID. And this will be the first year since COVID that we have gone, and I'm really looking forward to it. I wish that I had booked to stay for a day or two longer than I did, because it's just a few 2-3 days that we're going to be there, and it's jam packed with stuff to do, like dinner and lunch and 2 plays a day basically, and it's going to be nuts. So I wish that we had more time, but I think it'll be fun.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so many questions. The first question is, when you went to the $4,000 a night hotel for lunch or the meals, what was the lobby like?
Well, we didn't go to the lobby because in either case, the restaurants have separate entrances.
Oh, okay.
So I didn't see the lobby, but the restaurants were beautiful. The first one, you had to climb up this tall set of stairs, like outdoor stairs to get there, which was more than I was expecting at that point in my day, but it was fine. And you just go up the stairs, and at the top of the stairs, there's the entrance to the restaurant. And I'm not even sure where the lobby was, to be honest. I guess it might have been downstairs when we first, where the stairs started, but I didn't notice it. Brent probably knows. And then the other one, you walk in and you go off to the side a little bit, and then there's an entrance to the restaurant. So I don't know, but I'm sure it's gorgeous because, like I said, the restaurant was gorgeous.
Wow. I'm very curious now. So when I come visit you guys in Ashland at some future day, I will then make it a point of driving down to Big Sur to walk through the lobby of a hotel that's $4,000 a night, so I can scope it out for myself.
Yeah. You can ask them to look at a room. They'd probably let you. Huh?
I guess I could Google it. I don't have to be all 1970s. I've got to physically go and see it myself.
Have to make an 8-hour drive. You could look it up online.
That's how badly I need to know whether or not they have big, heavy velvet drapes that are hanging from the ceiling, or if they have white linen pillows. I need to know everything now. Wow, we are way off topic here.
Yeah, we are off topic. We're talking about prisons today. So we can talk about that if you like. Although it's not as fun, we can talk about the information about the experiments that a University of Pennsylvania faculty member performed on Philadelphia's Holmesburg prison inmates. So the information for this story comes from the Philadelphia Inquirer, Wikipedia, and a statement from the Mayor's Office of Philadelphia. So this is about Holmesburg Prison, which is now closed, but was allegedly called the Terror Dome, according to Wikipedia. It was a prison operated by the City of Philadelphia and the Pennsylvania Department of Prisons from 1896 to 1995, so almost 100 years, didn't quite make it. And we're talking about the University of Pennsylvania faculty member who, upon entering the Holmesburg prison for the first time, called it an idle collection of humanity that seemed ideal for dermatologic study. Dermatologist Albert Kligman said, "All I saw before me were acres of skin. It was like a farmer seeing a fertile field for the first time." And Kligman went on to perform extensive experiments, exposing inmates to herpes, staphylococcus, cosmetics, skin blistering chemicals, radioactive isotopes, psychoactive drugs, and carcinogenic compounds such as dioxins. And he received financial backing from 33 different sponsors, including Johnson & Johnson, Dow Chemicals, and the U.S. Army. One inmate described experiments involving exposure to microwave radiation, sulfuric and carbonic acid, solutions which corroded and reduced their forearm skin to a leather-like substance, and acids which blistered skin in the testicular areas. Ow! In addition to exposure to harmful chemical agents, patients were asked to physically exert themselves and were then immediately put under the knife to remove sweat glands for examination. In even more gruesome accounts, fragments of cadavers were stitched into the backs of inmates to determine if the fragments could grow back into functional organs. Such experiments did not simply affect the...
I had just to stop right there and say that this was happening, in the 1950s?
This was happening...
through the 70s, I know, but...
Through the 70s, yeah.
Yeah. I think in 1950s, we knew that you could not stick any organ anywhere and have it regenerate or regrow. I mean...
You think.
Some of that bullshit is just such bullshit. It's because we can.
It really is. I mean, yeah.
You don't have to...
If you put sulfuric acid on the skin, do you not know that it's gonna corrode the skin? I don't think we need to do this.
No, and if you need to do it, you don't need to do it with living skin. You can use...
Yeah.
I don't want to say animal skin, but...
Cadavers.
Pig skin or cadavers. I get that living tissue is different from, I'll use a big medical term, necrotic tissue, or dead tissue. But, come on, people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry, my outrage there. I was just like...
it's something to be outraged about for sure. Because such experiments did not simply affect the well-being of individual inmates, but also affected the health of entire cell blocks due to an experimentation with biological agents including Hong Kong flu, poison ivy, and poison oak. And in a Johnson & Johnson study, inmates were injected with asbestos to compare it against talc. Please. After obtaining some 1,800 pages of Pentagon records, the Inquirer published a report in 1979 detailing a contract between the University of Pennsylvania and the U.S. Army. With Dr. Kligman at the helm of the research, more than 300 inmates tested mind control drugs. I mean, MK Ultra is everywhere.
Yep.
Everywhere, and potential skin hardeners to protect soldiers from chemical warfare. In the latter experiments, the paper found inmates complained bitterly of side effects, including inflammation that lasted weeks and eventually eliminated the willingness of the subjects to go on. So common was the experimentation that in the 1,200-person facility, around 80% to 90% of inmates were experimented on. Many of the former inmates, not surprisingly, would have lifelong scars, and health issues from the experiments. So all the inmates who were tested on the trials consented to the experimentation. However, they mostly agreed due to incentives like monetary compensation. The Holmesburg prison experiments paid an extraordinary amount compared to other prison jobs, and at the time, in Philadelphia's prisons, inmates were able to end their sentence if they could pay for 10% of the bail amount. So in such a system, experiments were an easy means to earn the money for freedom. And the forms they signed for some of these experiments never mentioned the chemicals used or potential side effects. They simply authorized the experiments and aimed to clear the hospital, laboratories, and prison of any liability for complications. Kligman later said, "I began to go to the prison regularly, although I had no authorization. It was years before the authorities knew that I was conducting various studies on prisoner volunteers. Things were simpler then. Informed consent was unheard of. No one asked me what I was doing. It was a wonderful time."
It sure was. And I'll bet you he would say the same thing if those experiments were happening on his own family.
That's exactly
Wonderful
right.
time.
Unbelievable. So, of course, the vast majority of people subjected to this experimentation were black men, many of whom were illiterate, awaiting prosecution and attempting to save enough money to make bail. A group of inmates filed a lawsuit against the university and Kligman in 2000, but it was ultimately thrown out because of a statute of limitations. And Dr. Albert Kligman went on to pioneer the acne and wrinkle treatment Red-Nay. Well,
which,
yes.
That's what I'm currently
So nothing
using.
bad happened to Dr. Kligman. I assume he died, although I didn't look it up, and he never was called to task for the terrible things that he did. But the University of Pennsylvania did issue a formal apology last year and took Kligman's name off some honorifics, including an annual lecture series and professorship. The university also directed research funds to fellows focused on dermatological issues in people of color.
Yeah, it's a shame that this happened, right? But outside of like the shame for humanity, for this guy Kligman, he's credited with raising dermatology from like I'll say obscure field of study, right? But for bringing science to dermatology, right? And so he's sort of the force behind I don't know what word to use, the field, right?
Yeah.
Elevating it from a section of medical study to like its own medical discipline, and look what we could do. We could prove through science. And yeah, he would have had a really great legacy had it not been for the Holmesburg prison experiments.
Well, you can't. I mean, I can only imagine that this isn't the only unethical thing that he did.
Probably not,
So
but it's the only one that we know
somebody
about.
somebody willing to do this kind of thing and call it a wonderful time probably was doing other things as well. It's just, it's creepy. It's extremely creepy.
It's unfortunate, and it does get back to that point of how do you separate the artist from the art, right? And like, am I going to stop using Retin-A? No.
Right.
But
well, I don't use Retin-A. I use something like it. So I'm absolved of all
You're
guilt because
right.
I don't actually use the brand name Retin-A.
it's the horrible monster that I am. I will continue to support Kligman. Yeah. His last name isn't helping things either.
Kligman?
It's a very, very Joseph Mengele sounding doctor name.
Totally. Yeah. It is. Yeah. So before we get into the apology, do you have any background for us?
I do have some background. So I wasn't too interested in Kligman because I just felt like, all right, that story writes itself. Abusive doctor, disregards people's humanity, particularly when they're people of color and especially when they're in prison, right?
Right.
And so, cool, let's take a look at why this prison may have lent itself so readily to experiments upon humans.
Okay, sounds good.
Although Kligman does make it sound like, and he does say, that he just sort of walked in and nobody knew what he was doing or that he was there anymore. At a certain point, somebody had to have agreed that, like, yeah, come on in and test on our prisoners. So, as you mentioned, the prison was opened in 1896 and it closed in 1995, 99 years, not reaching 100. So, prison is a failure in that regard. In December of 1922, the Philadelphia Evening Public Ledger did an expose on the treatment of prisoners at Holmesburg. And the headline read, "No food for 24 hours for even just a whisper." The punishments that were levied against prisoners by Holmesburg Prison typically involve food. So you would have 24 hours without food for talking, smoking, chewing tobacco, right? You had a loss of exercise privilege for something as minor as laughing out loud. At one point, 574 convicts were in the facility in 1922. 2/3 of those were in solitary confinement. So this was a bad prison in a country that is famous for bad prisons.
Yeah.
On December 6th of 1922, a headline in the Evening Public Ledger read, "Brutal treatment of Holmesburg men known to judges." And so there was a cop. His job was to report to the Board of Judges issues at local prisons. And he received so many complaints about the issues at Holmesburg that he leaked it to the press. That's how the press found out. So again, though, we're talking 1922, right? And I'm not saying that people weren't kind or didn't have hearts, but it was a different time. And if you were in prison, largely, you deserved to be there. And some of the people in prison were convicted felons who had committed murders. A lot of people were there for robbery, right? Some people were there for assaulting a police officer. So there's a spectrum of, like today, I'm not telling anything that's new or unknown. There's a spectrum of people who are in prison for various reasons, ranging from really awful to you had to put somebody in prison for that, right? So the prisoners know that the public doesn't love prisoners, but the conditions in the prison are so awful, and in particular the food as being used for a form of punishment, right, was so, I don't know what word to use, but like the prisoners felt we can get people to unite behind us around food because basic humanity would dictate that people got to eat, right? So there was a hunger strike in August of 1938, and the hunger strike was eventually put down. 23 people who I don't want to say they organized the strike, but 23 of the most vocal strikers were sent to the Klondike. And the Klondike,
Wow.
I know, sounds like it's a really awful place in Alaska, but no, it's actually an awful place in the Holmesburg prison. So the Klondike was a small building housing only 12 cells, was frequently employed as an isolation unit to punish prisoners deemed disruptive. In August of 1938, the guards put these 23 men into the Klondike, and they closed the windows, they turned off the water, and they cranked up the heat.
Oh my God.
They used, the facility used steam heat and coming out of steam radiators. This caused the temperatures to rise to about 200 degrees Fahrenheit.
Jesus.
A few days later, the guards opened the door to find that 4 bodies had been baked to death, with many of the other inmates unconscious or close to death.
Oh.
And some of what happened during that time, the water had been turned off inside the Klondike, the isolation unit. But one of the water faucets was dripping. And so the prisoners would lay under the water faucet and catch the water as it dripped, right?
Yeah.
Because it was steam heat, there was a lot of condensation. So prisoners would use, they had stripped down because it was so incredibly hot.
Yeah.
So they would use their clothes to mop up the condensation and wring it and drink it, right?
Oh my God.
So cops open the doors and find 4 dead bodies. And the cops decide that these men went stir crazy and beat each other to death.
Oh, jeez.
The world took notice, and the deaths of the 4 men were covered in newspapers such as the New York Times, the Philadelphia Inquirer, and Newsweek, the last of which gave the story 3 full pages. This story became the basis for a play called Not About Nightingales, and was written by a young Tennessee Williams after he had read the news coverage of the events in Philadelphia. This event at the time was described as the worst case of prison abuse in American history. Yeah, so Alan Hornblum, who wrote a book called Acres of Skin based on the Holmesburg prison experiment, has written a novel that's based on, it has a couple of different names, but I like the Baked Oven Murders, and they use murder specifically because it's the police murdering inmates, right? So from news articles written at the time out of Philadelphia, PA, the article opens with a quote, my poor boy, what have they done to you?" cried Mary Osborne, glancing at the corpse lying before her. She then collapsed into the arms of distraught friends and relatives who had come to the city morgue to identify the remains of her 23-year-old son. The lifeless frame was shriveled, burned, and bruised, one eye ballooned to 3 or 4 times its size. Harry Osborne had once been ruggedly handsome and physically fit, but the lifeless frame on the slab in front of his mother was not only shriveled, but burned on the hands, feet, and torso. There were numerous bruises. One of Osborne's eyes had ballooned to 3 or 4 times its normal size, as stated previously.
I'm surprised anyone survived that.
I mean, just awful. Outside of the morgue, the family of another deceased man named James McQuaid paused to speak to reporters. They're just a bunch of murderers, screamed Herbert McQuaid, a brother of the dead man. I served overseas during the war and saw some pretty hideous sights, but nothing was half as bad as what I've just seen. His face was battered, his eyes were popping out, and his teeth were out. The Komedica family of South Philly was equally horrified. We won't stop until we find out how this happened. And I'll emphasize that these are people in the 1920s talking about cops at a time when I would think that most Americans probably really just bought into the red, white, and blue. The police are always good. I would like to put the body of my brother on display so the public could really see what happened to him. His eyes were hanging out on his cheeks, and they have since been sewn up. The back of his head was bashed. It was as though he were hit with a sledgehammer. The families questioned the sudden loss of their kin, wondering what brutal, inhuman treatment could have caused their bodies to appear burned and beaten. Pennsylvania Governor George Earle declared in horror that the 4 men had been cooked alive slowly. Not a prison that's going to turn away a medical doctor that wants to come in. And and even though it's so those experiments started in the 1950s. This event happened in the 1920s, so 30 years between that. Things got a little bit better, I suppose, and at least prisoners were allowed food. And food wasn't used as a form of punishment. But these sorts of stories are always really, you talk about them and then you end up in this place where it's like, how do we come back from this? Let's try.
That's terrible.
Yeah. And so just awful. And then not surprising that this prison does something that's awful again. So let's look at their apology for the prison experiment on prisoners.
Yeah. So I forget what year this was. Do you remember what year this was that the apology happened? It was recently, wasn't it?
It happened in October 6th of 2022, when the city of Philadelphia apologized for the Holmesburg.
So like 3 days
prison.
ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So Philadelphia Mayor Jim Kenney said, "While this happened many decades ago, we know that the historical impact and trauma of this practice of medical racism has extended for generations, all the way through to the present day. One of our administration's priorities is to rectify historic wrongs while we work to build a more equitable future, and to do that, we must reckon with past atrocities. That is why our administration today, on behalf of the city of Philadelphia, is addressing this shameful time in Holmesburg's history. Without excuse, we formally and officially extend a sincere apology to those who were subjected to this inhumane and horrific abuse. We are also sorry it took far too long to hear these words. To the families and loved ones across generations who have been impacted by this deplorable chapter in our city's history, we are hopeful this formal apology brings you at least a small measure of closure. Recognizing the deep distrust experiments like this have created in our communities of color, we vow to continue to fight the inequities and disparities that continue to this day." Michael Cord, a defense attorney and one of the activists who was a part of the movement, said that he was pleasantly surprised by the city's swift decision to issue the apology. "It is one of the best, if not the best, apologies I've ever seen in my entire life," said Cord. "I read it at least 5 times to see if there were any holes in it. I was pleasantly surprised and incredibly shocked." Well, let's see if the apology is
clearly
as good
not a
as
listener to
Cord
our
thinks
show.
So.
Yeah.
No. So, was there an expression of regret? Yes. They said, "Without excuse, we apologize and formally extend a sincere apology." So there was also a declaration of repentance. Was there an explanation of what went wrong? No, they kind of said racism is why it went wrong, but that's not really an explanation.
Racism in the past.
Racism in the past. So I would say not really. Was there an acknowledgement of responsibility? Yes. An offer of repair? Well, they said we vow to continue to fight the inequities and disparities that continue to this day, but they don't offer to give anybody money or houses or pay for their health insurance. So not really. And was there a request for forgiveness? Yes, I think. Wait, was there? There was an apology, but there was not a request for forgiveness. So I would give this apology. I don't think it's one of the best apologies I've ever seen in my entire life.
No, it doesn't send me into shock.
It's mid. It's mid. And I would give it a 5 because it's mid.
I absolutely agree. It's a very standard apology. And again, when we look at things like corporations or cities issuing an apology on behalf of the actions of people, it's always a culture, it's always a person trying to say, we're sticking a flag in this and we're raising notice about this sort of a situation. It will never happen again, or it shouldn't have happened in the first place. And so, it's fine, average.
it's a start. I think it's a start, and it should go on to include some research into why it happened, why this was allowed to happen, and some sort of reparations. So I think that would be a good next step, and then I would consider the apology to be much better. One of the better apologies.
Yeah, I would definitely want to see what our action plan was based on this. Outside of the very nice, we continue to vow to fight the good fight. Because me too. Right. I'm going to fight that good fight.
We all are going to fight the good fight. Yeah. But what is that going to do for anyone? So, okay. So do you have an apology expected or a who's sorry now?
Of course I do, because this is episode 102, and we have had 102 of these. And so I know it's coming, and I have one. It's right here. Here it comes.
Would you like me to go first?
Yes.
Okay, I have one. It's short but sweet. I have an apology expected. Lufthansa has become the first major airline to ban AirTags from checked bags. So AirTags are those little things that you can buy that track things, and you put them on your phone or put them in your luggage or put them in your purse, and then you can, if someone steals your luggage or your purse or your luggage gets lost, you can find out where it is. And there was a recent Twitter thread where somebody got their bags lost in France, and it wasn't Lufthansa. It might have been Lufthansa. The airline couldn't find the bags. Said we don't know where your bags are. We have no idea. But the AirTag said it was in Toulouse. So the people were like back and forth with the airline saying, "My AirTag says it's in Toulouse. Can you find it?" And they're like, "No, we can't find it." And, can you fly me to Toulouse to find it? I'll find it myself. So I don't know if that person ever got their bags back, but. I think soon after that, Lufthansa banned AirTags from checked bags, and they said that it was because of the policy for checking personal electronic devices, which requires that they be turned off, and if you turn off the AirTags, they don't work anymore. So, but that's obviously just a screen for the fact that they don't want to be embarrassed by the fact that somebody in Chicago can figure out where their bag got lost at, but the airline themselves can't find it. So why doesn't the airline just start using AirTags on all luggage? You'd think that would be helpful. But anyway, that's my apology expected. I expect Lufthansa to apologize for banning AirTags because I think they're just trying to cover up their own embarrassment.
Good luck to them for banning AirTags. Good luck to them. Wow. I just don't understand. I understand how things can get lost, but it's like, you guys have this, here's how technical I am. You have the scanner guns and you scan all the tags as they go through. Why can't the scanner tags just be the point of location of the bag? And I don't need to know exactly where it is every minute, but, it's on the belt. Oh, it's in the holding bay. Oh, it's out of the holding bay.
You have to know where it is to scan it. So that's the problem. Yeah, but I see what you're saying. Why not scan it everywhere, and then you'd know where it was because it had just been scanned at whatever its latest location was.
Or like they have to scan them anyway, right? So they do have to scan. They scan them when you hand them to the clerk at the counter, and they get put on the belt. And then they're scanned when they come off of the belt and onto the trolley. And then they're scanned when they come off of the trolley and into the holding bay. And
presumably, I don't know what they do. They may never scan it again.
They may not.
Who knows?
Yeah, I'm assuming that happens. You know what? You're right. Here, look at me. I'm outraged that
your process is much better than perhaps the process actually in play.
I'm not allowing for human beings, is what it is. Which is why the world needs to be controlled by robots, and I look forward to that glorious future. So I had a good one, and then it was gone, and then it came back, and then it was gone. So, Dret.
Well, we can give you a rain check if you like.
I'm going to take that rain check.
Okay, that's no problem. I'll take a rain check in the future myself, I'm sure.
I mean, I could apologize to the guy from this morning with the windshield wiper by saying, I'm sorry that I said, go away, so bluntly. I could have just said, no, thank you. And left it at that.
Well, you did say no thank you, and then you said go away.
No, I did, right?
It's all right.
So
that's your apology.
That'll be my apology. Yeah, so anyway, on that note,
thanks,
goodbye, everyone.
We'll see you later.
Take care. Stay cool, cucumber.
Cucumbers.
You started, and then I was like, don't step on her line.
Good enough. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
to Apologies Accepted, the podcast.
You can find links to the articles and the sources in the show notes.
To submit an apology or find out more, visit us at apologiesaccepted.net, where you can also find our merchandise.
We're on Twitter at Apologies Accepted.
And on Instagram at apologies.accepted.
You can support our important work at Patreon.com/Apologies Accepted.
And fuck Facebook.
Bye.
Bye.